your review day. So let's talk here for just a minute about our note card, right? Actually, before I do that, let's talk about the test format here, real brief. So, test is going to have 8 questions, right? Things you should be able to do is you should be able to look at the equation and give us the values for A, C, H, and K. Should be from an equation, you should be able to describe the transformation in words. I'll give you the criteria. So like if you look at the last page of your review.
Does the review due this Sunday?
Yep. No, I guess it's not. So I just copied and pasted it, that transformation criteria in from the lesson. You should be able to calculate amplitude, midline, period, frequency from an equation. You should be able to write the equation of a sinusoid from a description. You should be able to write the equation of a sinusoid from a graph. I'll tell you which parent function to use, so you should be able to do it both sines or cosines. And you should be able to draw a graph and generate points from an equation. So basically, what are the 3 kinds of problems we're going to ask you to do? The same 3 problems you guys saw on your most recent homework quiz that you did with a partner, right? So basically what you're going to see, you may see some of the same things like broken down as a sub question where I ask you to just give you something, ask you to tell me the values for A, C, H, and K. But like you had to do that to do the graphing problems, right? Or ask you specifically, here's an equation, give me the midline, period, amplitude or something like, okay, like, but you did that when you did the graphing problems. But that's basically those 3 kinds of problems. If you can do all of that stuff, you should be good to go. So if you're building your note card out, what would you for sure want to have on there? Or how would it best to be organized, or how would it best to be best to organize that or whatever? I would arrange it by problem, right? So I'd have like graphing, or maybe I just do like equation to graph, right? Graph to equation, and then description to equation. And I would, under here, I would include the things that, you know, what are the formulas that I need to know for, or the things I need to remember when writing, going from an equation to a graph. Right, so if I went and tried to look at the graphing problem that you guys all just did, first thing we need to find is, right, find A, C, H, and K. So I need to remember that like y equals a trig 1 over c x minus h plus k. Certainly. Here, let me give you this thing right here though. From before. And then I would need to like remind myself that C is like the reciprocal of the coefficient on x. And h is like the opposite sign, it appears, because it's minus h in the formula, right? And I would want to, make sure to factor before finding h. So those are just like general things that I need to remind myself about that process, right? I saw lots of us make mistakes regarding these kinds of things. Then typically on these graphing problems, we ask for like amplitude, midline, period, frequency. I'd write down the formulas for those. And then we have the like we plug the A, C, H, and K into that map, right? So I'd want to make sure I know like where the A, C, H, and K goes. Everybody feel good on that? Is there anything else that I'm forgetting?
Like the first part we did, like the zero is greater than C reflected across y-axis.
Right.
Yeah. Oh.
Okay. Was there anything else that I'm forgetting that we needed to use to do those graphing problems? From there, it's just kind of like plot and extend, right? And I know some of us have a hard time with the plotting. You know, just remind yourself to like look at the x scale, you know, and just like try to make the problem simpler, like take away the pi's and just think about it as fractions or decimals if you're having trouble figuring out where things go, right? Showed you guys how to use the calculator to do the fraction arithmetic. If you just leave the pi's out, you can do it on your calculator and just put the pi back in at the end, right? If you want to make a note of something like that, that would be good. That's something that you need. All right, moving on. Graph to equation. First thing we do is,
find the points.
you know,
Amplitude.
yeah, I do find the midline to get me the K. Find the amplitude to get me the absolute value of A, right? Now, if you're not sure on that, you can always write down the description of like where that, like how you're finding the amplitude from looking at the picture, but that's now becoming like a you thing, right? Like, do you need that extra layer? But certainly I'd want to have the formula, right? That the period is going to give me, or is going to be that. Right? Those are the first three things I do, regardless of what type of thing I'm doing, whether it's sine or cosine. So if I use sine, the point for my parent function we used was 0, 0, which is a min, midline, max. And I compare that to any midline point from the resultant function. And that'll give me the sign for A and the h. If we do cosine, the parent function point we use is 0, 1, which is a maximum, and we compare that to any extreme point from the resultant. And again, that's going to give me the a based on whether I'm going from min to max or just max to max. That tells me the sign for a. And the x-coordinate from the resultant is always just going to be the h, right? Maybe we put that as a separate note. Coordinate. And we say type of midline point tell or gives sign of a. Type of extreme point gives sign of a. Everybody's feel okay? Does that sound about right? Am I forgetting anything that we use in here commonly? I think that's everything, right? Now, obviously, you have to fill in some formulas or fill in some more details or whatever, but this is just like a kind of a scaffolding.
Can you write down tangent?
Well, I say here in the directions, equation of a sinusoid. So won't be doing a tan one, because a tan isn't a sinusoid because it's not a wave. So no worries there. Oh, and I should probably make a note here. Right. The period and frequency are different for tangent. A reminder for myself there. So I make sure I have two sets of labeled formulas or whatever, right? To go from a description to an equation, again, we want to start by finding kind of the same three things. But here it's going to be a little different, right? Because we could find that midline in a couple of different ways, right? So if we have a min and a max, then we have a formula for that, right? For k. If we have a midline point, we'd find k a different way. If we have a free point, we'd find k a different way, right? What's the formula for if we have a max and a min? Y max plus y min divided by 2. Just halfway in between the max and the min, the average of those two values. If I have a midline point, the k is just going to be the y coordinate, because I know the midline passes through the midline points. If I have a free point, choose the free point to be a midline point, and then you just do what you did for a midline point, right? Everybody's okay with that? If we have a amplitude, if we have a min and a max, how do we find that amplitude? It's half the distance between the extrema, so we'll subtract instead of add. If I have an extreme point and a midline point, it's just going to be the distance from the y-coordinate on the extreme point to the y-coordinate on the midline point. So I'll just call that an absolute value. That way, if it's min or max, like depending on which one you know, like, bleh, I don't want to muck around with a bunch of negatives. Just put an absolute value around it, and we'll call it good, right? Trying to think, is there any other situation we saw in the homeworks? I think that was it, right? Unless it just told you, flat out told you the amplitude. Which again, I don't think I need to write down. If it tells you the amplitude, then you have the amplitude, right? Yeah, Reese? We haven't even done a homework or problem where we have a description of a tangent and they ask you to write it. We haven't even done those in homework, so I'd say no. But fair question. Okay. Oops. Yes, Ellie. Certainly. So if we had to do the period, again, if we have min and max, what do we say? The period is, we do half the period is equal to the absolute value of like x max minus x min. If you given an midline point and next extreme point, it'd be like 1/4 period equals the absolute value of x midline point minus x extreme point. I think we saw one of those. If you have like a min or max and second EP, right? I guess we could say max slash min. And what do we say there? It's like 1.5 periods, right? I think those all came up in the homeworks.
It's 1.5 period.
Yep. So like if you have, you know, like I have the maximum, and then I have the second minimum after that, that's 1 period, and then like another half, right? So like that was 1, and then like there's another half. So it's 1.5. I think those are the situations that we saw, right? And then if we do, if we have a midline point or free point, H is the x coordinate, right? Should say that we use sine as the parent function, and H is the H is the x-coordinate from the midline point. Should probably be specific there. And then this, and then how do we find the sine of A? As we compare the type of midline point, which again is a min, midline, max, to the type of midline point from the resultant, right? Oops. If you have a min or a max, then we'd use cosine as your parent function. The h will just be the x-coordinate from either your min or your max. And then if you use the minimum to get your h, your a is going to be negative. And if you use the maximum to get your h, the a would be positive. And I think that kind of does it, right? For notes, I think that would be pretty good. At least to me, it seems like I have everything I would need to do that. Now, if some of this doesn't make quite sense to you, or there's some other stuff you want to fill in as you do some example problems, you're like, ooh, yeah, I might want that too. Like, obviously you can do whatever you want with this. It's just a suggestion. But this is just kind of me walking through the procedure. If you wanted to, you could even like write outline this inside of an example problem or whatever, so you can kind of see it for yourself in real time happening. But that's kind of up to you guys, right? You feel like this was helpful? Okay. The test is Tuesday. Ideally, I'd like your note card today. I think probably having this helps in terms of construction, where there's not much left for you to do. But when would the absolute latest you could give it to me? Tuesday community time would be the absolute latest you could get it to me. If on Tuesday before your test. You guys are the first ones taking it, right? Your third hour?
Monday.
Oh, Monday. Yeah, Monday. Sorry. Community time Monday. Oof.
I'll take it Tuesday.
It's hard, guys. This A-B thing. If you get stuck or you're absent or something, what can you do? Take a picture and email it to me. That's fine. I'll, at minimum, let you use the printout of your picture. Okay, so if you get stuck and you're like, oh, I forgot, I'm not going to be here on blah, 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 whatever. I came late. If you're stuck at home, or just take a picture and send it an email. It'll be okay. But don't do nothing, right? No, but you use a half sheet of paper, right? I say note card, I mean half sheet of paper. Yeah. Yeah, front and back. Part of the reason why I don't do a note card is it's just so much more convenient to just do a half sheet of paper.
Smaller.
Well, I'm not worried about the size. Like, at some point, it's like more space is actually not helpful because it's too much stuff.
No, you gotta like make it boxes and stuff.
Yeah, sure. But at this point, I think I'm done talking for you guys. Is that you guys feel okay about what's going on? Again, problem set wise, we have a whole bunch of stuff due on Sunday, right? Should we review what that is?
Delta math, review, and
Sunday.
Sunday. So we have Delta Math. And then our problem set. What do we have? We had 1 through 14 that I assigned last week. We have 15 to 26 that I assigned, whatever, was it? Was it on Tuesday that we did that? I don't remember now. We have worksheet 4, but I only asked you to do like 2, 6, and 8, I think. And then worksheet 5, and I only asked you to do 5 and 7. And then the review. So between all that stuff, you got plenty of things to be working on here, right? Whether it's your note card, the review, your Delta Math, one of these assignments, plenty to work on, right? Okay. Obviously, if you're working on anything, you have questions, feel free to come up and ask. But otherwise, I'm going to stop talking and let you guys be as productive as you're capable of being on a day Friday in a long week, but